In Parshas Lech Lecha, that's this week, at the end of the Parsha, we have a story, a bloody story. Avraham Avinu, at the age of 99, is given the mitzvah of Bris Milah, and he is instructed to circumcise his kids and to circumcise the entire household. The Yelid Bayis, those servants that were born by him, Miknas Kesef, those that he bought, it's all an obligation. And we have in number 1, it says Avraham was 99, B'himoyle B'sara Lasoi. I'm sorry, I don't have the beginning of the pasuk. When Avraham had the circumcision, he was 99. I'm sorry, we're short on paper, but that was it. I'm out of paper. If anyone's interested in quickly cutting down a tree and getting us some more paper, then we can. What? The Yishmael benoi ben shloishes reishani. Yishmael was 13. B'himoyloi eis b'sara lasoi, right when he had his bris milah. And then it says be'etzem hayoim hazeh, in the essence of this very day, nimoel Avraham. Avraham was circumcised, and Yishmael benoi. That seems to be an extra pasuk. Seems to be quite an extra pasuk. It just said Avraham was 99, Yishmael was 13. What does it mean? Be'etzem hayom hazeh. So the Rishonim differ. Rashi famously says, it's not in the paper, but you'll have to believe me. Rashi says that it was the day that Avraham turned 99 and the day Yishmael turned 13. It was on the very day that they turned these ages. It sounds like it was their birthday, which means Yishmael had the same birthday as Avraham. Okay, that's interesting. What's very problematic with that Rashi is this story was not on their birthday at all. When were the Avos born? So there's a machlokes in Masechta Rosh Hashanah, Daf Yud Aleph, Rabbi Lezer versus Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Lezer says in Tishrei, Rabbi Yeshua says in Nisan. The Gemara seems to go with Rabbi Lezer that it was Tishrei. The Shail is Yitzchak. When was Yitzchak born? So let's assume Yitzchak was born Pesach. But why would we assume Yitzchak was born Pesach? Because Avraham, when he has the Malachim in the beginning of Vayera, he tells his wife to make matzahs. So we assume that's Pesach. The Malachim then told him, Michal tells him, Lamoyed Hazeh, exactly a year from now, it sounds like, exactly this time next year you'll have a son. Well, if the good news was given over on Pesach, well, a year later makes it Pesach again. Now, those Malachim came to Avraham on the third day of his Bris Milah. So if they came to him on the 15th of Nisan, it means the Bris Milah was on the 13th of Nisan. If it's the 13th of Nisan, how is that Avraham's birthday? What's Rashi talking about? So according to Rabbi Yeshua, it's not a problem. Rabbi Yeshua holds all the Avos were born in Nisan. When exactly in Nisan? He doesn't give a date, right? Doesn't give a date. Maybe Avraham and Yishmael's birthday was Taka the 13th of Nisan, and that's exactly. The Eibishter gave him the mitzvah. The Eibishter chose. The Eibishter was very particular in the day when he told the Eibishter to do the bris. It was Dafka on the 13th, Dafka on the day he turned 99, and Yishmael was 13. We'll see more about that soon. And then it fits. 2 days later, the Malachim come on the 15th of Nisan, and they say in exactly a year you'll have a son. Yitzchak is born Pesach's perfect. The problem is the conclusion of the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah is actually like Rabbi Eliezer, that at least Avraham and Yankov were born in Tishrei. So Avraham's birthday is in Tishrei. This story happens in Nisan. How is Rashi saying it's Avraham's birthday? So the Ramban challenges Rashi with this, and all the Mefarshim discuss. Okay, so the Maharal learns Rashi's taka going according to Rabbi Yeshua. There's different ways of going about it. It's fine. Okay. But Akaponim, that's how Rashi learns Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh. Other Rishonim say Bechal wasn't their birthday. When it says Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, it doesn't mean on the day that Yishmael turned 13, the day Avram turned 99. It means on the very day they were commanded. They didn't tarry, they didn't wait. I mean, on the very day Avram got the mitzvah, he circumcised his entire household, his kid and himself. Which is a chiddush that you wouldn't assume it would have all happened on one day. Many Mefarshim point out it must have been a major operation. Tarti mashma. That for Avram to get everybody circumcised on that day. So look in number 3, there's an interesting comment of the Rosh in his commentary on Chumash in this week's parasha. Himol Yimol Yulid Beisecha, this is number 3. He says, Harbe Vladas Mol Avram, many of the kids Avram circumcised, Koidim Sheyamol Esatzma, before he circumcised himself. Vayukula Mesim, they all died. Ad until Shenosan Lo Eitza Mamre, till Mamre gave him an Eitza. We're very well familiar that Mamre, one of Avram's close friends, advised him about the bris milah. The simple reading is Avram wasn't sure, should I do the bris or not? And Mamre said, go ahead. And that's impossible to digest, how Avram was uncertain. Should he fulfill the mitzvah of Hashem? Years later from now, when Avram is much older, he doesn't hesitate to shecht his son Yitzchak, but he hesitates about the bris. It doesn't make sense. So there's many... What? Sorry. No, so the Rosh says it's a different pshat. When it says Mamre gave him the Eitzah, it wasn't whether to circumcise or not. It was Avram was at a loss. Avram tells his close friend, God told me to circumcise my whole household. I'm doing it, and then they're dying. How do you explain that? So Mamre said that the Hirgish mitoich mitzvahs HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Umoshain, if you look at the Eibishter's words, Sha'amar Hashem said, Himol Yimol Yilid Beischa. Why did Hashem say Himol Yimol twice? Hashem was saying, Hamol Yimol Yilid Beischa. Only someone who has a bris should give the bris to others. In other words, Avram first has to circumcise himself. Pirish Hamol, someone who has the circumcision, Yimol, he can circumcise. Kishahaya Nimol, once he's circumcised, Yochel Limol Esacherim, he can do others. Avol Koidim Shoyinimol, but before Avram did himself, Einer Rasha, he's not allowed to malam, to circumcise. And that's why they died.
What does Rasha mean? Allowed?
Yeah. In other words, Avram originally thought to circumcise everybody before himself. Why did Avram make that cheshbon? So some before... What?
He wanted to learn the technique.
Okay, so some... Yeah. So many Mefarshim say Avram, it's like trial, Exactly. It's like, testing medicines on animals. Al derech moshel. There's another reason. Avram was worried if he circumcised himself, he'll be very weak. How's he going to make sure? Avram was given a mitzvah. Everyone in the household needs a bris. If he does it himself first, he's out of action. He's recovering in his bedroom. So how's he going to do? Simple cheshbon. I got to take care of everybody else first, and I'll do myself. L'chor, that's the reason why he did it. And the problem is they were all dying. Horrible. So Mamre tells him, you got it wrong. You got to... what did God tell you, So Avram tells him, and Mamre thinks, and he says, I smell something over here. I think you needed to circumcise yourself first. Now, how are you then going to circumcise everybody else? Well, that's the way you got to do yourself first. By the way, halachically, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah learns from this pasuk, Himol Yimol, this very drasha that Mamre said. It's taka true. Only someone who has a bris can give a bris to somebody else, excluding a goy. It doesn't exclude a Jew who never can't have a bris for health reasons, because a Jew is be'etzem called a circumcised person. Yidden are be'etzem called nimolim. And goyim, even if they have a circumcision, are be'etzem still arelim. It's a din in laws of Nadarim. If someone says, I vow not to have benefit from anyone who's an orul, it refers to every guy, even if they have a bris, and it doesn't refer to a Jew who doesn't have a bris. So really, a Yid is be'etzem and nimel, and a guy is be'etzem and orul. But the shaila is, before Avram does his bris, l'chayre, he's not Jewish yet. There's a well-known debate, if Avram became a Jew, the Ramban holds he did, and he became a Jew by the bris. That means before he circumcised himself...
Then Yishmael became a Jew too. Because but
it wasn't passed on to his kids, and we have a whole shir about that why. But... Hold on, I was just saying something. What was
I'm sorry, but they're going...
so the shail is even the Ramban who says Avram became a Jew through the bris. That means right before he did the bris, he was still a guy. So how could he circumcise everybody first. He really needs to do it himself. So the Chayra, Mamre was mamish head on. It wasn't Stam Mamre said, I smell something in the Eibishter's words. The Chayra, what Avram tried to do according to the Rosh, the Chayra, it's mamish halachically invalid. It's Pashad al pi halacha. Simple that before Avram had the bris, he was a goy according to everybody. We once had a shir, I think. There are those that say Avram became a yid earlier, maybe by Lech Lecha, or maybe when Avram was thrown into the fire by Nimrod. And fine, but it's a major discussion in the Mefarshim. Was Avram supposed to circumcise himself first, or circumcise the rest of his kid and the family? And the avodim that he owned, and it boils down to this question: was he even able to circumcise them first? Well, the Rosh says that's what he tried to do, and the Chayr, it's mamish against a simple halacha that a goy cannot give a Jew a yid because of this pasuk. Thank you. Because of this pasuk, Himal Yimal. So there happens to be a tshuva the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer writes that once Avram was makabel on himself to do the bris, he didn't do it yet. He was ready to do it. The only reason he pushed his own off was to make sure he could orchestrate and arrange the brising of everybody else. But he was ready to do it himself. Says the Chassam Sofer, once you're makabel to do the bris, you're already considered a nimel. That's what the Chassam Sofer says. And therefore Avram actually was going down the right path when he made his original calculation to be mal everybody first. Nonetheless, the Rosh says they passed away until Mamre said, no, Himel Yimel means you pasha need to have the physical bris. It's not enough that you accept it, you have to have the physical circumcision.
Fremont and Torah, what is a Jew?
Okay, major debate. Simply it's like this. Tosfos holds that there was no such thing. Tosfos, the Ramban quotes him in Parshas Emor. He says the Chachmei Tzarfas, the French scholars believe until the year 2448 there was no such thing as a Jew. There was the Abrahamic family, just like there were many different nations, 70 nations. There was the Abrahamic family, and they had a special mitzvah bris that had been passed down, right? All of Avram's descendants, which made them unique, but they were halachically goyim with all of the ramifications of that. And if they wanted to be machmir to keep the Torah, which was going to be given in the future, so there were those that did, those that didn't. You know, the Ramah writes in a letter that Yaakov married two sisters, proves Yaakov never kept the Torah. The Ramah holds was only Avram. The Ramah says the Gemara discusses twice in Kiddushin and Yuma that Avram kept the whole Torah. It's only Avram. It wasn't nobody else. Amram married his aunt, etc. So you have those. What?
Matzah on Pesach.
What's it going to Matzah on Pesach?
You just mentioned they were making matzah on Pesach, pre-matzah.
Oh, right. So that would go, Avram. Avram. What family? Who's alive then? It's just Avram. What? Yeah, Lloyd's also doing it. Yeah. It was cheaper to serve him back then. Back then matzah was cheaper than a challah. When you're making it yourself, it's much easier to get away with matzah. Lloyd was using the Yom Tov to save a couple pennies. I should have said. Lloyd had lots of good things going for him.
No yeast, no sugar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's healthy. You see.
That's sugar-free.
When Lloyd asked Malachim to come into his house to eat, they said, "No, we don't need any sugar." He said, "Perfect, perfect. I have matzah just for you. I have exactly perfect for you." Okay. Anyhow.
Even if Avram maled himself, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah. The Chorisi Moya Bris, the Eibishter with Avram. Yeah.
So he wasn't a yid then. When did he flip?
So it's even a better shaila. How could Avram circumcise himself? Yeah, it's a big shaila. You said that. Yeah.
When
Okay.
did he become? When did that?
Exactly.
flip
Ella, it gets better and better. But the truth is, this is not the discussion of our shir. This is just a preamble. But Taka, how could Avram circumcise himself? If he only becomes a Jew after the circumcision, then as his circumcised,
Some say for it works because he
he's makabel himself. You have to say that as he's doing it, it happens at the same time. The bris and his Judaism comes together. Anyhow, so what are we talking about? So we're going to talk about the following. We're going to talk about a father has an obligation to give a son a bris, right? That's we all know. That's what happened to Avram. It says in Parshas Vayera, Avram circumcised Yitzchak kasher tziva oiseh Elokim as Hashem commanded him. And the Gemara in Kiddushin learns from there, a father has to circumcise his kid. The shaila is, if the kid doesn't have a bris for some reason or other, I don't know, the father was out of town, the kid wasn't well, for whatever reason there was no bris. Now the kid's bar mitzvah. Once the kid himself becomes bar mitzvah, he has to circumcise himself, he has to arrange it himself. The shaila is the father still responsible? Is the father still responsible?
Only to pay.
Who said he has to pay? Maybe not even. Now, first I'll tell you, when it comes to the mitzvah of circumcising your son, there's a big debate in the Rishonim. Many hold there's a mitzvah on the father to circumcise the kid. When you get a moyel, you're appointing him as your shliach. He's doing it for you. He's doing it for you. The Maharach Ur Zarua, Reb Chaim Ur Zarua, was the son of the Reb Yitzchak Ur Zarua. You're talking about 800 years ago. He writes as Bechlal not the mitzvah. The mitzvah on the father is to arrange the bris, not to do the action. And he says the moil is not your shliach. He doesn't have to be your shliach. Shliach is if you have to do with your own hand, you appoint somebody to represent you. Says the Marach or Zarua, the Eibusher never said you have to circumcise your kid with your own hand. He says he wants you to be on top of it. He wants you to arrange it. That's it. So that's a very important debate. But the shaila is what happens when the kid becomes bar mitzvah. Now the kid is definitely chayiv to worry about it himself. The shaila is the father off the hook, or is the father still chayiv? So look at number 2. We have a Rambam at the beginning of Mitzvahs Milah. Just one page this week. We tried to cram as much as we could on the page. Number 2, the Rambam. Milah mitzvahs aseh. Milah is a positive command. Shechayavin oleh kodesh. It's a unique mitzvah, positive command that carries chorus. There's only one other. Usually a mitzvah saseh, if you don't do it, there's no prescribed punishment in the Torah. Okay, the Gemara says you bring a korban oila to rectify missing the mitzvah saseh, but there's no court sanctioned punishment. When it comes to Milah or Korban Pesach, they are the two mitzvahs. If you don't do them, you get chorus. Shneimar, that says in this week's parsha, va'adol zocher asher lo yimol es pesad or losoy, a zocher who remains an oral doesn't have the bris, v'nichrasa anefesh ha'im ha'amel. It's not on the father, it's on the kid. Now, kid's a kid, sataka. As a kid, he's not going to get chorus. But continues the Rambam. Mitzvah al ha'av lomeles b'noi. The mitzvah is on the father to circumcise. The al ha'rav lomeles avodav on a master who owns goyish avodim knanim. Whether yilid bayis, they were born in your house. In other words, you owned the mother, the shifchon, she had a baby. Or miknas kesef, if you bought them from the street. Avar ha'av, if the father doesn't do it, oy ha'adin, v'loy mol oy son, if they don't carry this out, bittul mitzvah say they have not nullified, they have not fulfilled the mitzvah. However, ein a chayiv kares, they're not chayiv kares. Ein a kares toloi ela ba'aral atzmai. The kares is only on the person himself who has the foreskin. Ubeis din mitzuvim lomol oisei aben, if the father or the master default on their responsibility, then the Bezdin kicks in. Bezdin mitzuvim to mal the kid, or ha'eved, or the eved bismanai at the right time, ASAP. V'lo yanichu oral b'Yisrael. Bezdin is not allowed to allow an oral to remain amongst Jews, and not even ba'avdein. Continues the Rambam. Ein molim b'noi shalodam shaloi midaitoi. Now, if Bezdin's going to kick in, they can't come in the middle of the night, take the kid and they're going to do a bris. Only if the father is known to have reneged on his responsibility. Then Bezdin molinoise bal karcha. Bezdin will do it against the will of the father. There was an interesting halachic dilemma. It happened a number of years ago that there was an American family in Eretz Yisrael they were there for Yom Tif, and they'd had a boy. Fine. The boy that couldn't get a bris on the 8th day, the bris was pushed off. The first day that the bris could happen was on the 2nd day of Yom Tif, whatever Yom Tif it was in Eretz Yisrael. On the Yom Tif Sheni, the 2nd day of Yom Tif, the kid was considered, this was the day he could have a bris. The problem is generally, if a bris it's not at the right time, you don't do it on Yom Tif, not the first day, not the 2nd day. Here it's Eretz Yisrael, there should only be one day Yom Tif. The father, though, is American. And he's going back to America. So, and now we know there's different minhagim. What do you do when you're in Eretz Yisrael? But this guy's minhag, he went like the shittas, you keep 2 days. So the father said, the second day Yom Tov for me is still Yom Tov. So I can't circumcise my kid because it's a delayed bris. I can't do it. The problem is the boy himself is Israeli. The boy was born in there. He's a Ben Eretz Yisrael. As far as the baby's concerned, the second day Yom Tov is not Yom Tov. So the kid's basically screaming, I need a bris. The tata is screaming, I can't do it. The shaila is, does Bezdin go ahead and do the bris? Because the father's not doing it.
But he's still considered al Shulchan Aviv.
What?
He's like
Doesn't
al
matter.
Shulchan Aviv.
If the father,
But he's not a Ben Eretz Yisrael. He's not chayiv.
No, but he's still called. He's still young. He's
Yeah, but you don't
Shulchan
know.
Aviv.
Wait. The family comes from America to Eretz Yisrael, yeah? And they have a son who's been in their yeshiva for 10 years in Eretz Yisrael. No, wait, Tishma. He's already there 10 years in yeshiva. He joins there for Yom Tov. He's going to keep a second day Yom Tov because they're keeping? No.
He doesn't
No.
consider like al Shulchan Aviv. But somebody living with his parents, he's bound to his parents.
No, not in this case. Not in this case. If a boy is learning Eretz Yisrael for 10 years in yeshiva, right?
he's
He's a
not living in
Ben
America.
Eretz Yisrael.
Yes.
His parents come from America. He joins them for Yom Tov. He doesn't keep a second day. Because his parents, no, that wouldn't be a reason. Even his parents is a shaila. For sure, he's a Ben Eretz Yisrael. So the question came to many Rabbonim. It was a very intriguing question. It's a really geschmacka shaila. Got lots of people thinking. And it remained a big debate. There were those that said, Taka, the Bezdin does it. The kid needs a bris. The father's not doing it. He has epis achumra. Okay. But for the kid has no reason to wait. He's an oral. You got to do the bris right away. It's already pushed off. Once it's pushed off, push off more. No, we don't say that. Reb Chaim Brisker was once asked, right? Famous story. There were 2 kids that needed a bris on the same day. One of them, it was the kid's 8th day. The other kid, it was the 40th day. It was a delayed bris. So the shaila is, which one does the moil do first? So the moil thought, let me do the one that's the 8th day. Reb Chaim says, no, you got it wrong. Reb Chaim said, the kid that is the 8th day, he has the whole day. B'yom Mashmin, the whole day, just risen makdimin, but you have the whole day. The kid that's on day 40, every second is already past the red line. It's urgent. So you actually do it that way. You do the delayed kid first, says Reb Chaim Brisker, and then you do the kid that is the 8th day. So too, there were those that wanted to use that for this shaila and say that there's an urgency over here. The father wants to keep another day. The kid needs a bris. For the kid, it's not Yom Tov. It's like the father's not here. Bezdin does the bris. Could you imagine such a thing?
Yeah.
The Rambam says Bezdin only kicks in if he was avar and nimna l'maylay. If the father is keeping a second day Yom Tov, it's hard to categorize him as avar and nimna. Anyhow, I'm just throwing that in. I thought that was interesting. But this also has nothing to do with our shir. What? It remained a big machlokes. What did they actually do? That doesn't matter. The question is the discussion. No, the discussion is way beyond the story. What?
But don't you know what happened? Tachlis. What a paskin.
The real question is the basin pay for the bris too? All right.
Anyhow, okay, but let's go weiter. Let's go. Okay. Continues the Rambam Nis'alon mi Bezdin. We're in number 2. In the about 6 lines from the bottom. Nis'alon mi Bezdin. What if this kid though hides from Bezdin? So his father doesn't circumcise him, and he's hiding. Bezdin's on the lookout for him for this operation. And he's not home, right? He's hiding for years. V'loy malo and they don't end up doing it. Kishi gadol. So when he becomes bar mitzvah, hu chayiv lamalas atzma, he has to circumcise himself. V'chol yom v'yom sheyaver alav mishi gadol. Every day that passes after he's 13, v'lo yom atzma, he doesn't do it. Harihu mevatel mitzvah aseh. He's breaking an aseh. But there should be chorus, because the Rambam said before, chorus devolves on the person himself. So when does this guy get chorus? Aval eine chayiv chorus, says the Rambam. He won't be chayiv chorus ad sheyomus till he dies. V'u oral b'mezid. Only if he dies without a bris, deliberately without a bris. There happens to be a Ravid who argues on this Rambam and says no. His whole life he stands with the Isser chorus, a prohibition of chorus. And no, it's very hard to figure out what's the Ravid saying against the Rambam. Is the Ravid saying his Chayav Chorus when he's 13 and 2 days? Because no, the Ravid says his whole life he has an Isur Chorus on his head. Like, what does that mean? The Rambam maybe agrees that Chorus is on his head, but he only is actually Chayav till when he dies, because at that point he can no longer fulfill the mitzvah.
Can he marry?
Chorus is supposed to cause early.
Oh, exactly. So first you see from the Rambam here that Chorus must be in Olam Haba as well. There's a big discussion what Chorus is. There's usually the idea the person himself dies young and it can affect the children, but you see from this Rambam there's something about the person in Olam Haba. Now, so I'll just tell you that Reb Meir Simcha of Dvinsk, the great Or Sameach, famously explains the debate of the Rambam and the Ravid is the following. He says, according to the Rambam, you only are mavatul the mitzvah when you could no longer fulfill it. If someone's 60 years old without a bris, he could say, I can still do it, I'll get around to doing it, I have a whole life. The Rambam holds you only completely break the mitzvah when you can no longer fulfill it, which is when the person dies. Until then, you haven't completely broken the mitzvah, and therefore there's actually no chorus at all. Chorus doesn't begin till after death.
So this
according to the Ravid, once the guy's bar mitzvah and doesn't do the bris, he be'emes should be chayiv chorus already then. But since he's alive, he could do the bris, so the Eibusher with his patience allows him, let's see what's going to happen. Hashem says, really there's chorus, but it's frozen on your head. I'm only going to implement it. I'm not going to implement it yet because you're still able to fix it. What's the difference though? The Ravid will anyway say that it only begins when you die. He says very simple. The guy doesn't have a bris until he's 70. He's when I'm 70, I'll get the bris, right? When the guy's 70, he becomes very ill. He can't do the bris anymore. He's ill for 5 years, dies at 75. According to the Rambam, he's b'chlal not chayiv chorus. Because he was allowed to push it off, and the last 5 years he wasn't able to do it. He's an onus. According to the Ravid, he's going to be chayiv chorus, because he was already, when he was 13, 14, there was chorus frozen on his head. It's just the Eibishter says, there's a get out of jail free card. If you happen to do the bris, you'll be able to free yourself. But if you don't happen to do the bris, I don't care if you're an onus, you were ill the last 5 years, you couldn't do it. I'm not pinning you for that. I'm pinning you for what you did when you were 13. So that's how the Or Sameach explains the difference of the Rambam and the Ravid. What's bothering you? Yeah.
What happens when the guy gets married? So nobody knows he didn't have a bris. Now she finds out he doesn't have a bris. So the marriage is annulled, no?
How she find out?
What do you mean how she found out? On the night of the wedding? What do you
No,
mean
he'll
how?
tell her this is what a bris is.
She knows what a bris is. She learned it in school. What do you mean how?
You should hack him a China to get a bris.
No, he's not getting a bris. It's the same situation. That the marriage is annulled, no?
Yeah, exactly.
He's not a Jew.
Right.
No, he's a Jew.
No, he didn't have a bris.
So he's still a Jew.
No, you missed the beginning. He's not. That's what.
No. He's born a Jew. No.
That was before Matan Torah.
I'm asking. That's the question. I'm asking.
Ask Hamas.
She could say that this is a mistaken transaction.
So then, but he still doesn't get a bris till he's 70. How can they stay married?
No. They could.
That's my
Saying it's
question.
forbidden for her to be with him because he doesn't have a bris. There's no prohibition. The issue
what
is
happens to
I'm
each
wondering. It could. There are certain times that the marriage falls off. Marriage is a transaction. If there was deception.
Well, she didn't know he didn't
What?
have a bris.
They
never
discussed it. They never.
should have.
They never discussed it.
I never had a bris.
You know
She
what?
married him thinking he's a complete kosher Jew.
Deception.
He's a kosher.
Promote
That's the question I'm
He's a
asking.
kosher Jew.
deception.
But so how does it go back to Avraham?
You could ask lots of things. Well, what if they got married
And
and then she finds out he doesn't keep Shabbos or all these types of questions. What if she got married and then all of a sudden, news comes out? Certain things are mevatel, break the marriage. Certain things don't. Okay, let's go. So our discussion's like this. If you look at the Rambam in number 2, once the kid's bar mitzvah, we see the kid's chayiv to take care of himself. But what about the father's obligation? The Rambam doesn't address it. The Rambam begins saying a father has to take care of the son, got it. Then he says once the kid's bar mitzvah, he has to do it himself. Does that mean the father's free? I mean, what's going on over here? So look at number 4 is a Minchas Chinuch. The great Minchas Chinuch was a Chassidish Gaon, an incredible Torah scholar. in the times of the Tzemach Tzedek, Rabbi Yosef Ba'abad, Ben Av Bezdin. Ben Av Bezdin was sounds like a Svardish name.
Yeah.
He wasn't a...
There's lessons
yeah.
until today. There's the...
He was actually a brother-in-law with Reb Chaim Tzanzer, the Divrei Chaim, a great Chassidish Gaon as well. The Minchas Chinuch had a horrible fire in his house. All of his manuscripts were burnt. Everything was burnt, except for, as he said it, a couple pages he wrote on the Sefer HaChinuch, which today is 3 big volumes. But he was speaking with his brother-in-law, and he said, all those years of work, all the manuscripts, bookshelves of manuscripts, all destroyed. And all I have now is a couple notes I wrote on the Sefer HaChinuch. So Reb Chaim Tzanzer said, no, don't be dejected, take that, print that, and you're going to see that for you till the end of time, people are going to be koching in your work. For you, it's just a couple notes in the Sefer HaChinuch. But for world Jewry, it's going to be a world-shattering composition. So the Minchas Chinuch says in number 4, it's in this week's parsha, on the mitzvah of Milah. The Im Anim Supik, he says, I'm not sure. Im Higdil, if the kid becomes bar mitzvah, Shem mitzvah gam kein alei ramya, the mitzvah is now upon him, he's mechuyev to be mal himself. Im gam kein mitzvah, there's still a mitzvah on the father. V'loi nifka mitzvah mitoya, has the mitzvah not left the father, so they're both chayiv to take care of it. Or Dilma, maybe the mitzvah on the father is only when the kid's a kid. Aval kishahigdil, once the kid's bar mitzvah, maybe ein chiv mitzvah lav, maybe the father's no longer obligated, only the kid. And then he says, Miloshan Harav HaMachaber, from the language of the Sefer HaChinuch, who was one of the Rishonim 800 years ago, who writes, Al mi v'chulam milas bonav aktanim, Niriksas, it seems, Dafka bonav aktanim, it seems from the Sefer HaChinuch only children below bar mitzvah, not once the kid's bar mitzvah. V'nafkamina, what's the difference? The ima av ba'atzmoi moyel, if the father himself is a moyel, mechuyev lomul ba'atzmoi begadlusa gamken. We mentioned that Taka, the Marach or Zorua holds the chiv of milah only to arrange it. Many Rishonim believe, no, the mitzvah is actually to do it. When you get a moyel, he's your shliach, which would mean that if you are able to do the circumcision, you got to do it yourself. We always say mitzvah boy, yosim b'shluchai, better yourself than a messenger. So if the chiv is really to do the bris, the moil is only your shliach, then if you yourself are able to do it, you got to do it yourself, which would mean after the kid's bar mitzvah, the father should still do it. And the father should do it himself if the chiv still is upon him. L'shittas hashach and choshen mishpah, whatever, that you shouldn't give it to somebody else. Ubegadlusay, once his bar mitzvah, imroitza haben lomal esatzme. What if the kid wants to do it himself when he's 13? What if he wants to do it himself, right? And the father also wants to do it. Who gets rights? What if they're both fighting? The father hasn't seen the kid for many years. He finally sees him. Oh, you got to get a bris. And they're both fighting. Each one wants himself to do it. So if loy nifka mitzvah, the father is still chayiv, the father comes first.
Why?
Now, how does he know that for sure? What I would assume is because the father's chayiv is much longer standing. The father was chayiv already before the kid was chayiv.
What does that have?
We know. We often have an idea. If you have 2 mitzvahs and one mitzvah, your chiyuv started earlier, then...
take precedent.
Yeah. It comes up in a number of areas of halacha. So it could be that's the idea over here. But he continues, Im lav, if the father's not chayiv, bevadai, the son, if he's able to do it himself, then he has to do it himself. He shouldn't get his father. In addition, he says, if one of them did the mitzvah, if one of them did the mitzvah, there's an idea, if you steal somebody's mitzvah, you got to pay them 10 gold coins. So, anyhow, so that could also make a difference. Look at the next paragraph, V'lechayra. We're on the right-hand side of the page, the one V'lechayra. Continues the Minchas Chinuch. It seems to me that the Iker HaMitzvah Al Ha'av, it should still be on the father, because there in the Chosh Sham B'Shas, in the Gemara Kedushin, we count all the things that are Av is Chayiv. For example, Lomel, to give the bris, V'lifta to redeem his kid, to marry off the kid. Now, marrying off the kid is Vada, the kid's bar mitzvah. So if they're all in the same box, then just like marriage is after bar mitzvah, then so too bris milah. Im kain Lamoila V'lifta Sanami. So his first his first perspective would be that the father is chayiv forever. Ach mikol makom tzarchin. He said, wait a second. Everything we learned there from Sukkim. V'loy nizker dafka bonim ketanim. All the other things there, marrying off the kid, pidyon aben, it speaks there about doing it for your child, and it doesn't mention the kids that it's a kid. But by bris milah, it does mention that it's a kid. So maybe it's different. Pidyon aben, he says, it says b'chor banecho, the firstborn of your kids. Gadol and b'chor, that means even after bar mitzvah. The Talmud Torah we learn out the Lamar Tomesim is b'nechem, so that means any kid, even if the kid's 50 years old. Or lahasid, to marry him off. We learn from pasuk chulu b'nechem noshim, get for your children wives. It doesn't say the age of the kid. Avol gabe milah, the ikar hayalfusa. What's the source that a father has to circumcise the kid? It's from Vayomol Avram Esischak Benoi, who was 8 days old. Kashet Siva Yisraelikim, that's like Hashem commanded him. Muchach, that proves that he was commanded. But Milas Yitzchak, he was 8 days old. So Milah might be the one exception. The father's only chayiv when the baby's a baby. Now maybe it's only when it's 8 days old. Who said when the kid's 4 or 5? I feel even if you're going to tell me that after Zmana the father's chayiv, fine, behind a bekatnusa, as long as the kid's under bar mitzvah. But begadlusa is different because then the kid's chayiv himself. So maybe the father can go on vacation then. Efshar deloy chiva Torah rak leben, maybe only the kid, not the father. Then he says, Shuvar Isi I saw, in the words of the Sefer, Harav HaMachaber, the author of the Chinuch, in the Mitzvah 392, which is Pidyon Aben. The Sefer HaChinuch asks our very question by Pidyon Aben. He says, Ulefi Adoyme. This is the Sefer HaChinuch 800 years ago. That he's Lefi Adoyme, that it appears to him that a father is always chayiv to be paid to the kid. Va'afilu la'achashe, when it comes to Pidyon Aben, it's forever. Even after the kid's bar mitzvah, the father's obligated. Because the pasuk says, V'chol b'chor adam b'vanechotiv, they're all kids. How do you see from here the mitzvah's on the father forever? And then the chinuch says, so too it seems in Masechta Kiddushin. Says the Minchas Chinuch, Ataro, you see from here, Sha'arav ha'machaber nistapik b'zeh, the Sefer Chinuch is unsure. He says, Lefi adoyma, ach dai toinoita, but he's leaning that chayiv to be paida because of the pasuk. The pasuk. Look at the pasuk by Bris Milah. Im ken kan adarabah, here is fakert, where the pasuk by Bris Milah clearly is referring to a kid. Yitzchak was a baby. Maybe you're only chayiv when he's a baby, and you're not chayiv when he's older. I don't find that people are talking about this question. The Sefer HaChinuch discusses by Pidyon Aben. He does not discuss it by Bris Milah. Now, when it comes to Pidyon Aben Taka, in number 7 there's a sikha of the Rebbe, and Cheluk Yud Aleph in Parshas Boy. The Rebbe discusses basically the shail of the Sefer HaChinuch, what's it dependent on. So the Rebbe says,
what is a mashma from the pasuk that you have over there, Yishmael B'nai?
We're going to get there. Faket, from Yishmael B'nai it says he was 13. That's going to be the kasha. So look at number 7. This is from the Rebbe. B'negeya la'aviyah ben apoida, concerning the father who redeems his son. V'shel b'noi anifta, and as far as the kid is being redeemed, yesh loimer b'beizafan, there's 2 ways you could explain it. Aleph, number 1. Mitzvah ha'pediyah hi ala ben. It could be the mitzvah of Pidyon Aben is on the kid. Avo, but because the kid's only 30 days old, what do you want from a 30-day-old kid? Heya is being that it's ef shaloi liftois asai, we're number 7, since he can't redeem himself because he's a kid, be'eis chalois ha-mitzvah, when the mitzvah devolves upon the kid, he's a kid, so the father steps in. Hitila ha-Torah, the mitzvah on the father to be paid to the kid. V'nichnes b'mkoyme b'chiyav zeh, and the father takes on the responsibility. That's option 1. Bay's option 2 is mikara de dina chiv apti is on the father. The chiv's really on the father. Mitzvahs hapidini mitzvahs, and I don't have the rest. But the second option is the mitzvahs on the father.
It is your kid. You're redeeming your kid.
What's the difference of the 2 ways? So the Rebbe there says very simple. The first way is really the chiv's on the kid. The kid's the firstborn. The 30-day-old kid, what do you want from him? So the Eibusha tells the father, you take care of it. But once the kid's bar mitzvah, now the kid's responsible. The father could go on vacation. The chiv would be on the kid. The Rebbe says though, but if it's the second way is it's the father's chiv. It's just once the kid's bar mitzvah, he goes on the train too. But the father remains chayiv forever. So that's how the Rebbe explains the suffix of the Sefer HaChinuch. Like Sefer HaChinuch's not sure. This is the 2 logics behind it. In that same sikha, the Rebbe discusses by bris milah, you can have the same question. One option is it's really the kid needs the bris. Haraya, kares is only ever going to be on the kid. Father never gets kares. So you would say option A would be really the kid's the one that needs the bris, but it's 8 days old. What do you expect? So Hashem tells the father, you take care of it. But once the kid's bar mitzvah and he can do it, the father's off. Option B would be no. A father has an obligation to take care of the son's bris. The Eibishter gave a godly obligation on the father. And it's forever. No chorus. There's another din that the kid, when he becomes bar mitzvah, he's chayiv to do it himself, and if he doesn't, he gets chorus. So it's the exact same question. The Sikh is talking about Pidyon HaBen, but throughout the footnotes at the bottom, the Rebbe keeps discussing bris milah. And the Rebbe goes back and forth and back and forth. And he quotes a tshuva of the Rivosh. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Sheshes, one of the last of the Rishonim, he was in Spain, and then in 1391, with all the pogroms and everything, he went down to North Africa, to Algeria, and the Rivosh, in a famous letter, points out the difference of the bracha you make. By bris milah, he writes, says the nusach is lomul, whereas by Pidyon HaBen, it's al Pidyon HaBen. And the Rivosh wants to say that by Pidyon HaBen, it's really the kid's chiyuv. The Eibishter instructs the father to take care of it. Once the kid's bar mitzvah, the kid could do it himself, the father can go. That's it. It's not his problem anymore. But by bris milah, where it's lomul, it's poshed an obligation on the father himself. So the Rebbe number 8 says like this. It's a few footnotes here. I have the sikha of it. It's a few different footnotes where the Rebbe goes mamish back and forth. That by Pidyon HaBen you could say one way, by bris milah the other way. In number 8 is avalafi mashakasav b'rivosh tam harambam. Based on what the Rivosh says, the bepoides b'noi mavarich al, that by Pidyon HaBen you say al. Mavur lehepech, it's opposite to what the Rebbe wanted to say in one of the footnotes. B'milah kasav harambam, that the imoles b'noi mavarich lomoles haben. That it would come out that by bris milah it's dafka chiv on the father, in contrast to Pidyon HaBen. If you're looking at the nusach of the bracha, there's more reason to say Pidyon HaBen is on the kid. The father takes care of it till the kid's older, then the father leaves. But by bris milah, which is a chiv directly on the father, maybe the chiv is forever. But then the Rebbe says, Aval al pizet tzarchi and divrei Rambam b'pirish HaMishnayos. What's the Rebbe talking about? There's a comment of the Rambam in the Pirish HaMishnayos. There's the Rebbe quoted over here. He quotes it in another. He quotes it in another footnote. It's a Rambam in Masechta Shabbos, his commentary Mishnayos, and the Rambam says like this: once the kid is 13 and he reaches a time of chiyuv, nobody else is obligated except for him. It seems from the Rambam in Pirish HaMishnayos very clearly that once the kid's bar mitzvah, he's responsible for himself, and that's it. His father's gone. But according to the Rivosh's word, that it depends on the nusach of the bracha, then since by milah, the Rambam says the father says lomul, it should be a chiv on the father forever. So that's a question the Rebbe has over here. But I'll upon him.
With the Rambam, though, no?
No, the Rebbe ends off its debate Bavli in the Yerushalmi. There's so many options. The Rebbe gives numerous options in the footnotes over there, contrasting and comparing Pidyon HaBen to bris milah. But I'll upon him. The fact is, the Rambam writes in the Pirish HaMishnayos that by bris milah, once the kid is 13, finished. It's the kid and only the kid who's responsible, not the father. The Minchas Chinuch seems to be leaning that way as well. We saw in number 4. He starts off with a question, but he seems to be leaning towards the fact that once the kid's 13, the father can go on vacation. The problem is, wait a second, look at number 1 in this week's parsha. Yishmael is bar mitzvah. Didn't Rashi say it was the bar mitzvah day is bar mitzvah? And Avram gives him a bris milah. Avram was commanded to do it. Why don't we see from there that a father has to give a bris to his son even after the son is bar mitzvah? It's a big problem. The Rambam in the Pirish HaMishnayos says clearly that the mitzvah, once the kid's bar mitzvah, it's on the kid and only on the kid. Why don't we learn from this week's parsha? So there happens to be a letter of the Rashba that people quote. The Rashba is talking about Pidyon HaBen, The Rashba learns Pidyon Haben, the father's chayiv forever. And the Rashba says, because in Masechta Kedushin we put all the mitzvahs together, and just like the other mitzvahs are forever, so too Pidyon Haben. That's what he says. Now, in the list that's mentioned in Masechta Kedushin, Bris Milah is there too. It seems from the Rashba that Bris Milah itself also goes forever. So you would say, that's great. And maybe he learns it from the fact that Avraham gave Yishmael the bris when Yishmael was bar mitzvah. But what are you going to do with the Rambam? The Rambam in the Pirush HaMishnayos, the Minchas Chinuch wants to learn, and many others assume that once the kid's bar mitzvah, the father's, he's released. So what happened with Avraham and Yishmael? Okay, so in number 5 we have a Maharal. The Maharal says like this. Shenimaylu ba'oisa yoim shemalu loy tzadik tes The bris milah happened when Avraham was 99, Yishmael was 13. It seems like it was on the day of their birthday, which means Yishmael had now just finished 13 years. He's bar mitzvah. Avraham just finished 99 years, which means Avraham is now in the year 100, just started year 100, and Yishmael just started year 14. The Maharal says that's not the pshat. The Maharal says it was the last year of Avraham's 99th year. The last day. Avraham did not yet enter into Shnas HaMeah. Avraham was in his last moment of the 99th year. And so too was Yishmael. It was the last moment of the 13th year. The Maharal says it was Dafka. He says, Yesh L'Taretz, why the Pasuk repeats in the second line, HaKosav Omer, that in the years of Avraham Talia, Shelo yeh nichnes shnas kus la'Avraham. Avraham should not enter year 100 without a bris. Now, if he turned 99, that means at the moment you turn 99, you know what else happens? You begin year 100. The Eibusha did not want him to begin year 100 without a bris, and so to Yishmael, that Yishmael should not enter the 14th year, he should not reach 13. The clock should not strike 13 years and is an oral. Kikoy Matan Torah, there was no punishment till 100, fine. And it's mashma, he says, the ben kuf yanish when you reach the 100th year, not 100, when you're 99 in a second. He says, V'loy ha'yeroi, it's not fitting that Avraham should enter the 100th year without a bris milah. And he says, so too, that Yishmael should be 13. Without a bris can't be. So he says that right before Yishmael turned 13, it was the last moment of the 13th year, Yishmael had his bris. And he says, Dafka, Yishmael was still a cotton. He said, Avraham was not going to wait till he's a gadol, because then Yishmael, you could read it yourself. The Maharal says very clearly, it was the last moment of Yishmael being 13, the last moment of Avraham.
Before their birthdays.
What?
It was the day before their birthdays.
Or maybe it was the shayla is maybe the clock has to reach the same time, even when you reach the anniversary of your birthday. Maybe there's an idea that it has to reach the exact. We say shalosh esrei shanim v'yoyim echad when someone's 13 in one day. What's the pshat? Because when they reach the birthday, if you count the day they were born plus today's day, you have 13 years in one day. But the truth is, if he was born at the end of the day, late afternoon, and it's 13 years later, he's born on Ches Cheshvan, yeah? And then late afternoon, and then 13 years later, when Ches Cheshvan begins, you can call it 13 years in one day if you count both days, but really you can't count both days. Because the first Ches Cheshvan is born at the end of the day, and this one is only the beginning of the night. Yet we consider that Shalosh Esrei Shanim V'Yom Echad. But I don't know, with the Maharal, maybe it was the day before, maybe it was on the day, and for some reason then they were waiting till the clock reached the exact moment. But the Maharal says clearly that Yishmael had the bris before he became a gadol. Fascinating. In fact, if you look at the Targum Yonis and Ben Uzziel and the Chumash, he says in the end of Lech Lecha, before Yishmael entered the 14th year. That means before the clock struck 13 years. So he was still a cotton. Now, it's a chiddush though, that whole vart, because Rashi says on Be'etzem HaYom Hazeh that the day that he turned 99 and 13, it seems like he was actually a gadol. Reb Pinchas Baal Haflah was a great student of the Maggid of Mizrich, one of the greatest Torah geniuses 250 years ago. A close friend of the Alter Rebbe. The Misnagdim these days look at him as, they say he was a Litvisher, he wasn't a Chassid B'chal, they deny it. he wrote a sefer on Chumash called Ponim Yafes. And in it there were many Chassidic ideas that he brought. When they printed his sefer, they removed all of it. It was all taken out and removed. Reb Chaim Tzanzer was furious about it. And he said, those that printed it, they took out, whenever they found any hint to the Maggid of Mizrich or Chassidus, they took it all out. They say who was involved in the printing are Rabbi Margola's friend from Brod. But I don't know, because we don't know any other. He wasn't known to be a misnagid, so he was involved in the printing. What that means is, I don't know, maybe the manuscripts they gave him already had the Chassidus taken out. I don't know what to tell you. But Al Kapanim,
stops here.
The Ponim Yafes, he writes, he says we got the whole story Yishmael and Avram wrong. He says Yishmael got his bris from Avram, not as Avram's child, as Avram's servant. Who's Yishmael's mother?
Right.
Hagar. Avram freed Hagar when he married her. There is a lengthy Orach Chaim where he discusses that ultimately when Sarah convinces Avram to throw Hagar out of the house, right? Sarah's taina was, she's my shifcha, she's my maidservant. Avram says, what do you mean? I married her, I freed her. Sarah says, you can't free her, she was mine. She was given to me as a gift by Paroi. And you couldn't free her. That means her freedom was no good. She's still a maidservant.
What?
What?
I think the Rebbe says not that Avram said I freed her. Avram said I thought you gave her to me.
Yeah, that's another option. The fact that it was Sarah's idea, right? So Sarah is now telling her that B'chlal, no, I never freed her, which would mean that Yishmael has a din of an eved. If it goes by the mother, if someone's mother is a shifcha, a maidservant, then the kid's an eved, a slave. If you have a servant in your house, you're obligated to give them a bris as a master. It doesn't matter the age of the kid. So that's the path that the Ponim Yafes takes. In fact, I saw that Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, they quote that he reads in number 1, he has a great diuk in the pasuk. In number 1, look in pasuk Chavav. In the essence of this day, Nimael Avram and Yishmael. You should have said Nimaelu. Nimael is singular. She says, you read it like this. In the essence of this day, Nimael Avram had the bris. Period. Yishmael Benoi and all Anshe Beis say Nimaelu Ito. Yishmael got a bris milah to give it the whole household. Because the Ponim Yafes says Avram gave Yishmael the bris as an eved, not as his son. Now that's a very interesting take on the matter.
The question is if let's say somebody, there's a mitzvah, right, that if you have a shivcha from after Matan Torah, it says if you say have a shivcha, you have to give your eved to the shivcha to have children, whatever.
You don't have to.
You have to have either you have to give it to your son.
On Omevriya. No, that's a Jewish girl. Yeah, Omevriya. Yeah. Oh, so this is an interesting answer, but it's not the simple pshat is Yishmael got. It says the pasuk says Yishmael Benoi. The pasuk Yishmael Benoi. If Yaakov Kamenetsky's diuk is right, it's very Yishmael Benoi. It's in the wrong pasuk. It's in the wrong place. The word Benoi maybe shouldn't be there. It's a cute word, but it's not the simple reading. So we're back up the creek without a paddle. The simple reading seems to be Yishmael was bar mitzvah. Avram did it as a father. So doesn't this prove that a father always has to give the son a bris?
Yes.
So there are those that say, wait a second, don't you know the rule? You can't learn from before Matan Torah. It's a Yerushalmi, a Tosfos quotes. The Yerushalmi says that they sat Avelus 7 days. By Yaakov, 7 days of Avelus. And the Yerushalmi says you can't prove from there that forever there needs to be 7 days of Avelus. You can't learn from what it says before Matan Torah. You can't learn from what it says before Matan Torah. In the year 2448, Hashem gives us the Torah. That's everything changes. Nitna Torah, Nischad Shalach, there's new halachas. Whatever was recorded before then is important to know and everything, but it's not halachically binding. So many say, Taka Yishmael was bar mitzvah. Avram gave him the bris, Avram had to. But there's nothing to do with what we do now. The problem with that is, I don't know, to me it doesn't make any sense. First of all, There is a pasuk in Parshas Tazria, "Ubiyayim hashmini yimo b'sar losai." That's a source to do the mitzvah of milah. The Yerushalmi Taka says that's the source of the mitzvah. The Bavli doesn't. The Bavli says the source of the mitzvah of milah is from the pasuk in Lech Lecha. We quote all the psukim from Lech Lecha. Not just that. There are many things we learn from before Matan Torah. Ein ma'arvin simcha b'simcha. You can't mix one simcha with the other. We learn from what Lavan tells Yankov. Ma'ale shvuos, finish the enjoyment with Leah, and then you'll marry Rachel. We learn out from there you can't mix one joy with another. We learn Zrizin Magdimin Lemitzvahs from Avraham Avinu. He got up early. What do you mean? How could you quote from before Matan Torah? So there's many ways of going about it. The Shavus Zrizin Magdimin Lemitzvah is a halacha. It's halacha. Ein ma'arvin simcha b'simcha is a halacha. Ein ma'arvin. You're not. It's halacha. You're not supposed to.
Okay, but that's not the halacha. We're not learning from Avram.
There's a halacha. No. Asur la'adam l'shamish mitasa b'shnei ra'avin. It's asur for a person to have a union with his wife during years of hunger. It's a prohibition. We learn it from Pashas Miketz, from Yosef. It says Yosef had his kids before the hunger began. We learn a prohibition. So the Shavus Yankov, Rabbi Yankov Raisha, the great, gone 300 years ago, he tainas anything which is logical you can learn from before Matan Torah. You can't learn a rule which has no explanation. They sat Avedas for Yankov 7 days. Why 7? 7 days. You got to do 7 days. For that, we'll tell you anything which is like a chayk you can't learn from before Matan Torah. Anything which is logical you can. The Maharatz Chayes, one of the big Gaonim 200 years ago, he tainas that anything which was said as a command you could learn before Matan Torah. Gid Anashe said before Matan Torah. Prudavoy said before. Anything written as a command you could learn. It's all the things which are said as a story. Like the fact that they sent Avedas, that they said Avedas was said as a story. What? No. Even things that are said as a story you'll divide. Some yes, some not. Something said as a command, for sure you can learn from. And the Maharatz Chayes gives an example, all the things that happened by Avraham and Yishmael.
Yosef, it's not a command. By Leah it is.
Right, no, so I said, if it's a story, then some you will learn, some you won't. If it's a command, the buck stops there. Of course you could learn. So we're back up the creek without a paddle. So I'm going to offer an answer and tell them what you think. In number 6, it's another Minchas Chinuch. That we know when it comes to Yidden, until Bar Mitzvah, a person is a child. After Bar Mitzvah or a girl, Bas Mitzvah, they're an adult. What about by Goyim? Do they also have 13 and 12? So it's a big debate. It depends. What's the source that by Yidden it goes by 13 and 12? There's a debate. There's a Medrash Rabbah that says we learn it from Shimon and Levi when they fought against Shechem. It calls them an Ish. And if you work out the years, they were 13. We learn out from there, at 13 you become an Ish. The Rosh, in a letter, writes that all of the numbers were given to Moshe Rabbeinu at Mount Sinai. Halach l'Moshe Misinai. All of the numbers for Mechitzas being 10 Tfachim, Kazayas, all of the amounts, numbers, all the mathematics was given to Moshe when he was there on Har Sinai. Amongst those numbers, says the Rosh, are the years 13 and 12. Comes the Minchas Chinuch and says, all those numbers that were told to Moshe and Har Sinai were only told to Jews, not to Goyim. A Goy can't have Avim and Achai. It's not a Kazai, it's even a drop. A Goy can't steal. It's not a Shava Pruta like it is for a Jew, it's anything. There's no Shiurim by a Goy. So it says in Minchas Chinuch number 6. It's Mavur in the Rambam that Katan Sha'avar al Echad min ha-mitzvahs shelo eino ner. The Rambam says that if a Goy violates one of his 7 commands, if he's a kid, he doesn't get killed. Says the Minchas Chinuch, Ein kavanose Katan kodim 13 years old. When the Rambam says a Goyish Katan is exempt, he doesn't mean 13. Because 13 was given only to Jews, based on the Rosh. You know what a Goy depends by? On his maturity, his or her maturity. Are they reliable and can you hold them accountable? Are they responsible? Or are they still kinderish? Rak imu Katan, lifi oim dan dait, depends on each person. If this Gentile kid, in his mind, is still young and immature. Ein loy das, he has no understanding. Al kain ein einshin. So when the Rambam says that a goyish katan is off the hook, it doesn't mean 13. That's not the barometer by a goy. Ulefize, he says, afilu katan, and the Minchas Chinuch says big chidushim. We know by Yidden that if a married woman, God forbid, does or any erva has a forbidden relationship with a man, if the boy is under 9 years old, then the intimacy doesn't count. Says in Minchas Chinuch, by God, there's no such thing. I feel a cotton mipachas mi bentesha. If you have a 4-year-old Gentile boy, Boal Agdoil, lives with a Gentile woman who was a married woman. Ima cotton ein baidas. If the kid is a fool, right? Never, she's killed. She's killed. Not like a Jew that less than 9 years old ain't biyasa be a klal. By a Jew, if the man's less than 9, doesn't count.
Even if he's a boy?
Yeah. That b'chal is not Gili Arayis, right? But I know that right. You would have assumed that 9 years old is more of a physiological thing, right? The Minchas Chinuch understands not. He says, and if this 4-year-old kid knew what he was doing, he would kill him too. And so too, if a Ben Noach lives with his sister and she's less than 3 years old, because in halacha less than 3 is nothing. He says, by a goy, we'll throw that din out the window. L'gabe Ben Noach, there's no difference above 9, below 9, above 3, below 3. All those dinim were only told are part of the shiurim whispered to Moshe on Mount Sinai. Nothing to do with the goy. And then he says, I can now understand a difficult Rambam. The Rambam says that a Ben Noach, sodomy, God forbid, a Ben Noach can killed if he was with another male, even if the other male was a child. And the Kesef Mishnah said it's mashma, even if the other male was less than 9. And the Kesef Mishnah says, I don't know where the Rambam got it from. Says in Minchas Chinuch, it's simple. I'll tell you where the Rambam got it from. Because the Rambam holds like the Rosh, that all the numbers were told to Moshe and Har Sinai, amongst all the shiurim, that's only for Jews, not for Goyim. For Goyim, it's a different barometer. It's the person's understanding and the person's knowledge. So what I want to suggest is that Yishmael was Taka 13. This din of the Rosh, that it depends on the kid's knowledge and understanding, it goes both ways. If he's a clever 9-year-old, he'll be held accountable. If he's a foolish 18-year-old, he also won't be held accountable. If you look through the way Chazal describe Yishmael, he was very unstable. Yodei Bakel Yad Kol Bo, he had no limit. The ideas of where he was a para Adam. The Targum Yonis and teaches that in this week's parsha, when he's referred to as a para Adam, he's going to be like an animal, mamish, lacking in understanding. You know, I always think Yodei Bakel, his hands in everything, V'yad Kol Boy, remind us what it says in Pirkei Avos, Shali Shalach Shalach Shali. It's all a mix. And what does it say there? This is an Amoritz. And the Mefarshim explain how such a life has no wisdom. It's cute, but it's foolish. Well, that's what Yishmael was. What?
Communism.
Yeah, but that's not something without agency, without your personal agency. That's a difference.
It shows in a lack of understanding. I think the fact that the Targum Yonason says in this week's parsha, when the Malach tells Hagar he's going to be a para Adam, the Targum Yonason says he's going to be like an animal, means that's how his actions are going to be. In next week's parsha, we see Yishmael is mitzachik, busy playing around. Rashi says, murder, avodah zarah, gili arayis, and the guy had his hand in everything. Yodei Bakel is like in every single avera. So l'chayra, you could tie in it, maybe Yishmael was taka over bar mitzvah. But he was not settled, his mind wasn't settled, and therefore there's no raya. You know? There's no raya, because when it comes to a Ben Noach like Yishmael was, it all depends on the person's understanding. At that time, he was still considered a katan, a kid. So translating that in halacha would just be before bar mitzvah. There's no raya that older than bar mitzvah, the father is still chayiv. So the Rambam is vindicated. But like I mentioned, many believe the Rashba disagrees. So it comes out as probably a debate between the Rambam and the Rashba. The Rambam holds the father is no longer chayiv once the kid's bar mitzvah, and the Rashba seems to hold the father's chayiv forever.
Forever.
You can't shout that Rambam by the Goyim. That